So finding the x-intercepts of these functions, especially cubic and quartic functions, is going to be a review from Math 30-1, but it's going to definitely fit into like our whole picture of being able to curve sketch for this unit. Now, I know like if you haven't taken Math 30-1 or you're taking it at the same time as you're taking this course, this might be a weak point for your skills. So I definitely think we should go through this, make sure we've got this one down. So if we want to find the x-intercepts of this function, well, that's going to happen when y is 0. So let's do that first. We'll say, okay, it's actually when 0 is equal to 2x cubed plus 8x squared plus 5x minus 1. Okay, and then from here, what we have to do is we've got to figure out our factors. And it's definitely tougher when we have a cubic function. So where we start is we want to find any potential zeros. And where we start is we look at our last number and we want to find the different factors of -1. And this one's nice because it's -1 because we only really have to try 1 and -1 to see if they're going to be our factors. So let's put that in. So we'll say, okay, what is, I'm going to do it over here, f of 1. Okay, well, f of 1, if we put that in, that'd be 2 times 1 cubed plus 8 times 1 squared plus 5 times 1 minus 1. I end up with 14. So that's definitely not a 0. So f of 1 is not a 0. Okay, but what about f of -1? If we put this one in, this actually does become 0. So if we go 2 times -1 cubed plus 8 times -1 squared plus 5 times -1 minus 1, that comes out as 0. So f of -1 is equal to 0. Well, what does that mean? That means that x plus 1 is a factor. Okay, so that's like my first, so I know that that's going to be one of the factors when they do this. So now what the next step is if I take this function and I divide by this thing that I know is a factor, that's going to tell me what's left. And really the easiest way to divide a polynomial function like this is to use synthetic division. So let's do that. So we're going to start by making our line. And then the 0, right? It's actually like -1. So if your factor is x plus 1, then it's going to be -1 is the one that we're trying. And then from there, we're going to be putting our coefficients in. So up top, we've got 2, we've got 8, 5, and -1. And then first step is we bring down the 2. And then we go -1 times 2. So this is -2. And then we add these. And then really in this case, we're subtracting, right? 8 minus 2. So this is 6. And then now back to, so -1 times 6 is -6. And now 5 minus 6 is -1. And now lastly, -1 times -1 is +1. And this comes out to 0. And we actually always knew it would, right? You know you did it right because this was a 0. Like it should cancel in the last part there. Now, what do we do with these numbers? Well, these are going to be my new coefficients, but it's going to be starting at x squared this time. So now it's going to be 2x squared plus 6x minus 1. So that's what's left. So far, what do I have when I'm factoring this guy down? So far what we have is 0 is equal to my first factor, right? We figured that one out. So it's going to be x plus 1. And then what's left is this. So now we've got 2x squared plus 6x minus 1. Now from here, you would... Sorry, a coughing attack there. So from here, you would attempt to factor this, right? So you try to find numbers that multiply to 2 times -1. You know, whatever method you'd like to factor these ones that have a leading coefficient that's not 1. The problem is it actually just doesn't factor. There's nothing that works for this one. So what are our options? Well, from here, what we want to do now, if we actually want to solve this, right, is we're going to have to use the quadratic equation. Solving it for this one is fairly straightforward, right? That's just x is equal to -1. But for this one, I'm probably going to get some irrational numbers using the quadratic equation. So let's do that. And you know what? Maybe beforehand, let's even just lock in this answer. One of our answers is x is equal to -1. Okay, but now we're figuring out these two answers from this one. So from here, yeah, we're going to say, so the quadratic formula is x is equal to -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So filling this in, we get negative. Our b value is 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4. My a value is 2. My c is -1. And this is all over 2 times 2. So what we get from here is -6 plus or minus. And then we have the square root of, actually I don't need that long anymore, the square root of, this becomes 44 all over just 4 at this point. Now we want to simplify this radical down as much as we can, right? So we can split this radical up as 11 times 4, right? So this would be x is equal to -6 plus or minus the square root of, and then yeah, this would be 4 times 11, right? All over 4. Now this 4, I know the square root of 4, right? That's the reason I chose that to split it up as. So now I get to take the square root of 4, or bring it out as a 2. So what we have left now is x is equal to -6 plus or minus 2 root 11 all over 4. The only reason I'm doing this, well, I want to make it as simple as possible, right? And I want to cancel as much as I can with the denominator here. So if I want to know what's fair game to cancel with this 4 on the bottom, maybe you can see it now, right? Because it's going to be 6 over 4 and 2 over 4. But the other way of doing this is just to factor out what's common up top. So I'm going to factor a 2 out of this. So I'm going to say, okay, 2. And then I have -6 plus or minus. Now the 2's gone. So root 11. Oh, not 6. My bad. Minus 3. And then the 2's gone. All over 4. So now from here I can see, okay, it's pretty obvious what's common. So now the 2 cancels with the 4 on the bottom, and I just have 2 left over. So we get x is equal to -3 plus or minus the square root of 11 all over 2. So here's my two answers, right? The plus version and the minus version. So let's write out what our zeros of our function were. So the zeros of our function were x is equal to, and the first one was -1. So x is equal to -1, and then my one of them was -3 minus the square root of 11 over 2, and the other one was -3 plus the square root of 11 all over 2.